Welcome into the DMV zone on your Thursday. We're taking you behind the scenes of all our stories, and it is a busy day. Here's your top three. At 3, we're talking about everything from a fight about power lines to soccer. Yes, even though the World Cup is over, we're still talking soccer. Right now, let's kick it off with the big story of the day. Staying in the district where homicide rates have likely fallen to historic lows that have not been seen in this entire century. This is according to a new report released today by the Council on Criminal Justice. Homicides in the district are down 37% so far this year. Robbery, sexual abuse crimes, those are also down. Thaddeus Johnson is a senior fellow at the CCJ and a former law enforcement official. Thaddeus, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's walk through these numbers. We have heard from the administration, from the White House, that violent crime has been ticking down, particularly in the D.C., but really nationwide. What are we seeing in terms of those numbers and the data that you guys sorted through?
Yes, absolutely. You know, D.C. is part of a really encouraging national trend where we saw that homicides fell across the board, ag assaults, and you're also talking about property crimes, things like carjacking. We're seeing these things across the nation. In our study, it was about an 18% decrease across cities. And then actually DC decrease was a little bit larger, around 40%, a little bit larger than the decrease we saw in other places across the nation.
I mean, this is really encouraging news. It is great news. It is news that should be celebrated. We're coming down off of 2023, where we saw some of those violent crime, those homicide numbers really spiking to levels that we had not seen in decades. What are some of the factors that are contributing to the decline?
Well, look, no, that's the $1 million or $1 billion question, right? And it's not just one thing; it's numerous things. But we can think about, when we think about just kind of returning back from the pandemic shock, systems and courts back up and running. Also, you think about policing getting smarter, using technology. You see more coordination between law enforcement agencies. You also, when you think about law enforcement being smarter, and also violence intervention and other alternatives as well. So we just don't see a drop, but things that can kind of help us try to sustain this momentum that we're seeing.
Yeah, and one thing we do have to talk about is over the last 18 months, we have seen National Guard troops on the streets in D.C. You've seen a very visible federal law enforcement presence, and you hear from D.C. police that they are still wildly understaffed. How much does that play into these numbers?
That's very hard to tell because, not only in D.C. did we see declines, we saw declines in other parts of the nation as well that may or may not have had interventions there. We know that policing has gotten smarter. We know that even in 2023 and starting that, we've had robbery task force where you had federal and local have been working together. We've seen some bolstering of the court systems and getting cases moving after the pandemic slowdown. So it's not just one thing. It's a whole of government approach that we've seen. It's involving citizens and community members because this is not just a policing matter. This is an all of us matter. And so all of those things have been moving in place. We're actually working on research right now to try to tease these things out to see what we can contribute and what we cannot contribute.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more about that research. As you guys are pouring through these numbers, through this data, is there anything else that is surprising? Obviously, the homicide drop is a striking figure, but what else did you guys find?
Yeah, well, I will say, the homicide drop is really stark. But for D.C. in particular, while we saw declines in other major crime types, robbery as well, ag assaults compared to this time last year is a little bit higher as well, and gun assaults as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that there was more crime. It could be that there were more reports. It could mean that more of these things came to the police attention. But I think, we shouldn't just ring the victory bell.
Yeah.
We should make sure that we keep doubling down on the things that have been working and really trying to be efficient in how we do things. How
do we keep the momentum going? How do we keep that good news going?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's continuing to involve law enforcement, community engagement. It's continuing to do smart policing. So we're not just stopping and frisking. In D.C. at any given time, it's about 200 people who are responsible for the vast majorities of crime. And so it's a very small group of network that does this. And so finding where they're at, trying to also, once we arrest and find, that we think about long term. We need re-entry. We need to make sure we have ways to reintegrate people into our society. That's what we need for sustainability. And also prevention, looking at juvenile crime and starting early, not just waiting until the trouble comes. Come before the trouble gets there.
Absolutely. You know, we can celebrate the good news, and we can understand that there's still a lot of work to be done ahead of us. But homicides down 37%, historic lows. Thaddeus Johnson with CCJ, thank you so much for joining us and breaking down all the work that you guys do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Moving on, there is a growing pushback in Prince William County against a Dominion Energy proposal to put up high-power transmission lines, and it includes from county leaders who voted no to the idea of routes running through Braemar community. An open house meeting set to take place tonight as Dominion weighs its path forward. We're going to bring in Uriah Kaiser, founder and publisher of the Potomac Local, to explain this further. You know, we have talked about this, Uriah, happening in Loudoun County. It is also happening in Prince William County. It's similar stories in both cases here.
Homa, you bring up a really good point about Loudoun County, because in Loudoun, it was the State Corporation Commission that decided that it would allow that project for that transmission line in Loudoun County to move forward. In neighboring Prince William County, we have this proposed transmission line that the board, as you just said, took a vote to say, we don't want these two particular routes that Dominion has proposed because they cross over county land, something like 8 times. It's kind of ridiculous how many times the same line goes over this county-owned land. So the county said, no, we don't want this. And Dominion kind of acquiesced and said, okay, we'll remove these 2 proposed routes of about 3 or 4 proposed routes in total.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the SEC in Richmond is the one that will be the final say over all this. So yes, the county can make all these claims and pass all these resolutions, but Richmond has the final say on this.
And for some background here, Dominion in both these cases is trying to connect 2 substations. You know, they have the Golden to Mars project in Loudoun County, and then they have this one in Prince William County. And they're saying these are needed, these are necessary to keep up with the energy demands that are growing in established neighborhoods. Uriah?
Yeah, and we've seen the battle between overhead and Barry and Dominion. Dominion always wants them overhead because they're more efficient, they say. Underground, they can become less efficient. You know, the real story here, I talked to a couple of officials in Prince William County today, and the real story is these data centers where this substation is going and the end of this line, whichever route they choose for it. Yeah. The data centers have been there for a while, and they're continuing to be under construction. What we're hearing and more is that the data centers that are being built, they may not be powered for years to come. There's a wait list for these data centers to come online, and Dominion is now telling them that there's just simply not enough power to go on. So as I'm looking at the map and looking at where this line's going to go and this new substation, I'm thinking to myself, there's been data centers here for a long time, and it's been years, and now we're just talking about getting power to them, which is what this line will do.
Yeah, it's like we put the cart before the horse. That meeting is tonight. No votes. It is just public information for folks who want to learn more about these transmission lines. They'll be running through Prince William County and the various roads. Uriah Kaiser, always good to have you and your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Homa.
All right, moving on. AAA reporting the price of a gallon of regular gas is above $4. Once again, the price of a barrel of oil is above $100. The spike in energy prices being blamed on the war in Iran, which has taken a new turn involving another waterway critical to moving oil. To talk more about this, we're joined by Bishop Garrison with the National Security Institute and founder of Orange Court Strategies. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, bring us up to speed here. We were ticking down at the pump now, and it seems like we're back at it.
Yeah, after 12 consecutive days of attacks and back and forth with Iran, we're now looking at barrel prices being above $100 a barrel, unfortunately, which is going to make gas prices increase here domestically.
Okay, so we have heard from President Trump repeatedly where he is saying when Iran attacks, we're going to take out your power lines, your bridges, your structures. And then you still have this blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Where are we at with the latest, and when would we see any kind of relief?
Well, we just saw Secretary of War Defense Pete Hegseth speaking before Senate appropriations yesterday, asking for tens of billions of dollars more in order to push this war forward. It would take us somewhere roughly around 120 billion now in total if he is able to access these additional funds. At the same time, Iran has really dug in when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, and they, as we can see, are completely covered on control of the space overall, while we're continuing to bombard them, and we're continuing to see all of these prices in oil, petroleum, on trade continue to increase. So we're at a very delicate moment right now overall, and there's not clear of any type of end in sight right now, unfortunately.
Right, a diplomatic off-ramp doesn't seem to be in the cards at the moment, and you heard from Secretary Hegseth on the Hill talking about their main objective here is to make sure Iran does not get nuclear weapons, any kind of enrichment. And yet we have made a deal now with Saudi Arabia. So for folks who are watching and wondering, what is the difference here?
Well, Saudi Arabia continues to be somewhat of an ally to the United States, and has long been so. But look, when we're talking about nuclear proliferation, when we're talking about nuclear power potential within the region, it is not a good thing for us to be able to make these types of deals for potentially seeing more enriched uranium within the area. And the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has already said that's one of the things potentially he will look at doing if Iran is allowed to continue with its nuclear program. And right now is unclear what the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is ultimately going to do to that end.
All right, we'll still see lots to walk through here as the war continues. And again, we have seen that loss of life with American troops and billions of dollars here at stake to continue this war with Iran. National Security Institute's Bishop Garrison, thank you for joining us. As always, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and the DMV Zone is back right after this.